Members' motion with no legislative effect. Members who wish to speak, please press the Request to Speak button. The Council will now proceed to a debate on Mr. Lam Chun-sing's motion on continuously reviewing the targeted poverty alleviation strategy. 4 members will move amendments to the motion. This Council will proceed to a joint debate on the motion and the amendments. I will first call upon Mr. Lam Chun-sing to speak and move the motion. Then I will call upon Ms. Elaine CHIK, Mr. CHAN Cho-kwong, Mr. Michael Lee, Mr. Bill Tang to speak in sequence, but they may not move the amendments at this stage. The joint debate now begins, and I'll call upon Mr. Lam Chun-sing to speak and move the motion. Thank you, Deputy President. I move that the motion as printed on the agenda be passed. Thank you. Targeted poverty alleviation is the strategy of the current time government. The report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong was announced. All the KPIs have been met. We have seen a great success. However, society is concerned about the poverty trends and changes in Hong Kong. What about support measures? Are they targeted? Are they sufficient? We used to use the poverty line as the baseline. Indeed, there were issues such as the definition of the poverty line only factored in how much money one makes. It doesn't factor in assets. Whatever you call this group of people, they are people who struggle to make both ends meet. They live hand to mouth. Elderly people need to be cared about. We need to chat with them. We need to enhance their sense of well-being. I agree, but that is not the most important from the perspective of poverty alleviation. Actually, there are people in society who struggle to make both ends meet. They are just scraping by. So it's different when we say we need to care for people and alleviate poverty. There are 21 macro indicators to assess the overall situation in Hong Kong. Take the EU as an example. They use serious lack of materials as an indicator. It covers a total of 13 personal, individual, and family indicators, such as a lack of ability to meet ad hoc expenses, recreational events, and so on. As long as one person of the household meets 7 criteria, then they fall under the category of poverty. It doesn't just factor in income. It also depends on whether one can maintain normal social life and has access to necessities. Of course, socioeconomic conditions vary from one jurisdiction to another. I don't think the criteria used by the EU can be applied to Hong Kong, but they are worth our reference. While we do not use the term poverty line, we can let society know the impacts of poverty alleviation strategies and policies, such as the employment rate and family income of single-parent family. Usually they are on the lower side. The government can set up KPIs within the first 5-year plan. For instance, they can use the ratio 5%, the figure 5% as a reference. They can also factor in the labor participation rate of single-parent families. I propose tripartite collaboration among the commercial sector, the public, and the administration. For example, the government can provide tax incentives and subsidies to encourage enterprises to provide flexi working hours for single-parent families. This allows them to have good work-life balance. At the same time, they can also make money. In the coming 5 years, the Northern Metropolis has INT as well as the NM University Town. 3 decades ago, we only needed to address housing issues in Tin Shui Wai. However, transport, employment, social facilities, all these were lacking back then. this has translated into a lot of issues, and this is exactly what we need to address. We need to help people to get on a housing ladder, for instance. This is very important. The administration touches upon education, medical, social welfare expenditure. Regarding social resource and value, grassrooters live in the public rental housing units and they have access to as much as millions of social expenditure. But I do not want to see that the administration insinuates there is no likelihood of increase in resources. If the local economy picks up in the future, I believe more resources could be dedicated to social welfare. We need to continue to provide laser-focused help to improve the life of grassrooters in Hong Kong. The following are my suggestions. Regarding allowances for working families, the threshold for seniors could be lowered. They can be aligned with that of single-parent families. We need to provide allowances in order to help seniors with employment. We can also provide progressive subsidies for children or families with children. For families with more children, they need greater support. Regarding school-based after-school care service scheme, we need to extend the coverage of the scheme to junior secondary levels. Children and students in junior secondary forms should also receive homework help. Regarding the community living room in Yuen Long, there are as many as 4,500 subdivided unit households. We should set up community living rooms in government venues. We need to kickstart the project first. We also need to provide laser-focused help to parents who need employment training. We need to help them plan a job to improve their lives. Regarding those who have long-term employment difficulties, we need to assign case managers to these type of people to provide targeted assistance. In 2 to 3 years, we expect to improve the situation. In 2020, the government suggested making MPF contributions of 5%. I understand it's not easy to foot the bill. However, I hope that the administration will think of different proposals to consider the possible financial impacts. In addition to 5%, instead of providing 5% of contributions, what about 3%? Can we set a fixed amount? I hope that the government will not refuse these suggestions categorically. These type of people do have the capability to work, but then they are on lower salaries. Is there any way to help to improve the life of the working poor? We need to pool resources. We may not have to use a significant amount of resources. We need to pool resources into driving development instead of dispersing money purely. We need to improve the life of people in Hong Kong by way of continuous employment. Some disadvantaged groups in Hong Kong have higher risks of poverty, such as ethnic minorities, persons with disabilities, homeless, those falling into poverty because of illnesses. We need to provide targeted support. We need to make dynamic adjustments, and we need to keep renewing our goals when it comes to poverty alleviation. We shouldn't just chant slogans about improving the sense of well-being and gain. We need to, with KPIs, improve the life of grassrooters. Thank you. I so submit.
係林振昇議員嘅議案。
And I propose a question to you that the motion moved by Mr. Lam Chun-sing be passed.
Ms. Elaine CHIK. President, I thank Mr. Lam Chun-sing for moving today's motion. I move my amendment to propose my recommendations. These suggestions were advocated by the DAB over the years, and these are the focus of discussion in the community. First of all, I suggest that the government quicken its pace to alleviate intergenerational poverty and help poor families accumulate capital for their children. Study shows that children who are poor will result in low educational attainment in the future, and the health conditions and unemployment possibility is higher for people who used to be poor when they are children. So I think that the government need to invest in educational counseling for children and young people. Over the long run, we will reduce their reliance on society. Among the targeted poverty alleviation measures, the government implemented the Rise and Shine program, but it lasts only 1 year. For children that are growing up is not sufficient. I think that the government should extend the program for pupils. I think that we can learn from the Children Development Fund by introducing a saving functions to the program to encourage participants save up so that they build such a habit. This will enhance their financial awareness, and this is beneficial for their long-term development. In the end, we may be able to alleviate intergenerational poverty. And I also think that we should strengthen support for grassroots and carers. Some carers, in order to take care of their family members, they have to give up on their jobs, and they are susceptible to double poverty. Recently, there is a tragedy involving an elderly double-ton family. These families have to shoulder a significant healthcare expenditure. The government last week just published the report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong. I hope that the government will detect elderly and the carers. And I think that we should lower the threshold of community care teams visit to elderly younger than 80 years old. And I think that we need to detect those in need, including people with long-term illness and their carers, so that our poverty alleviation measures can be more targeted. Also, I think that we need to reduce reliance of CSSA recipients. The government is planning to offer 3-year cash bonus to CSSA leavers and that are eligible for working family allowance. But cash bonus may not be sustainable. I think that at the same time we need to offer employment support and training so that they will continue to stay employed. And this will also enhance their financial management skills. And this will make them more self-reliant and independent. At the same time, I think that we need to make good use of artificial intelligence and big data to establish a database of disadvantaged groups. I think that we should consolidate data from population census and healthcare records. We need to use these data safely. Through analyzing case data, we should detect high-risk families with risk of domestic violence and suicide. So this is how we can make our resource allocation more targeted. Now, I'd like to talk about the report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation. The DAB is of the view that the report is comprehensive, and we recognize the government efforts in targeted poverty alleviation. I think that the government should make a report regularly. In the report, the government raised this idea of social value, and I think that this is social transfer values. I think that this is valuable for our analysis, and I think that the government needs to make use of the data to deploy resources efficiently. This will allow us to make the most efficient use of our social resources. Mr. CHAN Cho-kwong. Thank you, President. I fully support Mr. Lam Chun-sing's original motion, and I support Ms. Elaine CHIK's amendment. I hope that the government will not forget those who have just escaped poverty. If we look at the report of the government published recently, it seems that we don't have those without means in Hong Kong. We only have 900,000 people in need. Many people are faced with a harsh reality in the sense that there are 1.4 million people living in small apartment. There are many working poor. Over 200,000 grassroots people work more than 10 hours per day. Netting out inflation, transport fees, and healthcare expenditure, they are not able to save up for their future. In order to lift people out of poverty, the government need to formulate relevant policies. We need to make sure that people can live on with respect. Poverty alleviation is more than welfare expenditure. It's the core to all government policies. Under the 15th five-year plan, it is stipulated that we should strengthen efforts to guarantee and improve people's livelihood and solidly advancing common prosperity for all people and set out specific arrangements. In order to support the government in formulating our first five-year plan and to consolidate and enhance the effectiveness of poverty alleviation policies, I think the government needs to review its targeted poverty alleviation strategy and deepen efforts to alleviate, combat, and prevent poverty, helping more disadvantaged groups in need. The government just targeted 3 groups for alleviation. I recognize the efforts. The government used 20 macro monitoring indicators to replace the poverty line. For those that don't meet the indicators and are poor, they will be ignored. They are not eligible for public rental housing. They can only live in subdivided units. Some young people can only afford 2 meals a day. Some carers are stressed beyond belief. These 500,000 people don't have cash with them. So I think that we should not ignore them. President Xi, in his publication on poverty alleviation, talked about a core idea. We need to study the grassroots level. I think that this is very inspirational for the government. Government officials should not sit in their office and just look at the big data. We cannot just help the grassroots people by paying their public rental housing rent on their behalf. The government need to walk into the community and meet people's aspirations. At the same time, I think that the government need to establish a dynamic adjustment mechanism. I think that we need to create 4 target groups, that is hidden carers and low-income families. Also, for those that have just escaped poverty, we need to establish a transitional support mechanism to prevent them from falling back into poverty due to minor economic fluctuations. For those that just escaped poverty, we need to make sure that they will continue to be supported so that they will not fall back into poverty because of a few $100s of emergency. In the President Xi's book, Up and Out of Poverty, it says that the government should never forget their people. I think that the government need to include the relevant poverty alleviation measures in the 5-year plan. President, I so submit. I fully support Mr. Lam Chun-sing's motion and Ms. Elaine CHIK's amendment. Mr. Lee Chen-keun. Thank you, Deputy President. In recent years, the SAR government have just implemented many poverty alleviation measures, and they just published a report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy. The government does not have a definition for poverty line, but when it comes to poverty alleviation, people focus on CSSA recipients and tenants of subdivided units. Very often, we forget those that are in the middle class and young people, as well as the sandwich class. These group of people may have a reasonable income, which is higher than the threshold for welfare and public rental housing of the government, but they are faced with high rental and tax burden. They have parents to take care of. They have children. They are extremely stressed and they're forgotten in our public policy. I hope that the government will set the poverty line above the sandwich class, because when there is economic fluctuations for this group of people, they will fall back into poverty. Middle class or sandwich families, they may have children. Their family income may be $40,000 per month. They're not eligible for public rental housing. If they have to rent a flat in the private market, the rental will account for 40 to 50% of their income. At the same time, they need to pay for their children's education. They have to take care of their parents. They also have to pay for transport, healthcare, so on and so forth. Their expenditure is equivalent to their monthly income. They have no savings at all. I think that we need to help them. The government is trying to help grassroots people escape poverty. When they move upward along the social ladder, they may not be able to afford private doctors. And if they want to improve their living conditions, they won't be able to afford rent in the private market. And that's not what we want to see. That's why I think that the government need to detect this group of so-called middle class that are struggling through tax allowance, by increasing child allowance, implementing tax deductions for domestic helpers. We can offer them substantial support. I think that the government need to establish a middle class living expenditure indicator so that we can track their status. When the indicator is higher than the alarm line, we should offer support to them. I'd like to also talk about the mobility of young people. According to the latest study, over the past 10 years, university graduates' salary is far lower than the inflation rate and the increase in property price. For graduates of universities, they earn only $16,000 to $18,000 per month. So if they don't eat or drink for 10 years' time, they will be able to afford down payment for property. Some university graduates just prefer to just work part-time in order to be eligible for public rental housing. This is a heartbreaking reality for us. President, young people should be the most motivated group of people, but because of our system, they refuse to move upward the social ladder, and this is a loss to our economy and competitiveness. Our country advocates for common prosperity for all people. We want everyone who is willing to work hard, whether they are grassroots, middle class, sandwich class, or young people, they can share the fruits of Hong Kong's development. I hope that when the government formulates the 5-year plan, they will continue to review the targeted poverty alleviation measures so that we can cover also middle class, sandwich class, as well as young people. I so submit.
Ka-piu議員。
Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, Mr. Lam, for moving this motion. In the last term of the Legislative Council, I also moved a motion on the poverty alleviation policy in Hong Kong. At that time, COVID struck Hong Kong. It was 2022. So I remember vividly that we were still having a video conference. All of us had a mask on. On top of income, it was all about how we could pool resources provided by the community and the administration to help those who need them the most. When it comes to implementation, it was very meaningful. I had been a member on the Commission on Poverty. I have the document with me. That is a report released by the Commission on Poverty in 2014, and I also have the report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong. Each of them has their own significance. We are faced with different issues, such as a wealth gap, intergenerational poverty, and so on. Mr. Tong led the first term of the Commission on Poverty. Well, I mean, it was chaired by the Financial Secretary. At that time, the Secretary General, Mr. Yu, went to Yetong Estate to listen to the public together with us. At that time, Yetong Estate residents needed to pay $40 for transport to just express their views. They are worried that their children will find it difficult to have upward mobility, and that was the background of the Children Development Fund. The Commission on Poverty, the second term, was led by the Chief Secretary for Administration. Well-being, welfare and policies were driven by public funds, including the cancellation of the offsetting mechanism. Close to 1 million seniors in Hong Kong, probably from 700,000 to 800,000, and we are spending $40 to $50 billion on these seniors. Now it's all about targeted poverty alleviation. We need to recognize the effort of the previous terms of Commission on Poverty. They implemented different policies, so many families in need did not have to face a harsh labeling effect. They do not need to go through a rigorous vetting mechanism before they could enjoy benefits in Hong Kong. Let's not forget Hong Kong is a low-tax jurisdiction. Workers in Hong Kong only need to contribute to MPF accounts. They do not have to pay any social security payments. We need to implement targeted poverty alleviation strategies. We need to help the most needed group in society. We have different policies such as community living rooms, Strive and Rise program, school-based after-school care service schemes, and so on. We also leverage on the forces or the efforts of the community care teams to visit those in need, such as elderly doubletons. How can we translate them into measurable and tangible efforts? It hinges on the efforts of the government. Just now, members referred to 15th Five-Year Plan, and this is the concept of disposable income. Under the 15th Five-Year Plan, disposable income is actually one of the 20 indicators mentioned therein. We want to implement targeted poverty alleviation strategies. We need to help those in need in society with a network. For workers in Hong Kong, or for wage earners in Hong Kong, we hope that there could be indicators in addition to disposable income. As long as wage earners work hard, then they can improve their lives. I so submit.
局長。
Secretary for Labor and Welfare. President, first I thank Mr. Lam Chun-sing for moving this motion on continuously reviewing the targeted poverty alleviation strategy. I thank Ms. Elaine CHIK, Mr. CHAN Cho-kwong, Mr. Michael Lee, and Mr. Bill Tang for their amendments as well. Last week, the Commission on Poverty released the report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong. Mr. Lam's motion comes at a very good timing. It gives us an opportunity to discuss focused poverty reduction in greater depth and exchange views on how to support specific groups in need. I will start with a brief introduction to the current administration's philosophy and framework for poverty alleviation. As for the other issues raised in the amendments, I will address them in my concluding remarks. First, let me quote what the Chief Secretary said during the press conference on the report. He said, "Poverty alleviation is all about people. We need to identify those most in need of assistance, understand their specific needs, and determine how best to help them.
Many grassroots families need more than just financial aid. Families need living space. Children need to broaden their horizons. The elderly need care and companionship. And single parents need a temporary respite from the burden of caregiving. People need to build connections within their community so that when adversity strikes, they can stand together instead of being left to fend for themselves. This people-centric approach marks the foundation of our anti-poverty policies. True to this vision, the current term government is developing a comprehensive system to tackle poverty. Every year, we allocate hundreds of billions of dollars to public services like housing, healthcare, education, and social welfare to provide citizens with a basic standard of living. For those with financial needs, we provide cash allowances to ease their burden. These universal services serve as an essential safety net and a tool to build capacity and empower our people. They benefit the majority of citizens, forming a crucial foundation of the government's poverty alleviation efforts. Building on this foundation, we adopt a multi-dimensional analysis to identify target groups and understand their needs. For those at the bottom of the ladder, including subdivided unit residents, single-parent families, and elderly households, we want to provide them with targeted support. We look at the traits of each target group, use objective criteria to identify their hurdles and pain points, and apply targeted solutions. Through collaboration among the government, the business sector, and the community, we have launched a number of initiatives to tackle poverty. They include the Strive and Rise program that we're all familiar with, and the pilot program on community living room, which are designed to support households living in subdivided flats, the school-based after-school care service scheme that supports single-parent families, and district care teams' visits to elderly households. Universal social services and targeted poverty reduction go hand in hand. They support, complement, and strengthen one another, forming a systematic, sustainable, and comprehensive framework that weaves a tighter safety net for families in need. These initiatives represent our framework for tackling poverty. There are also the key messages of the report. The Commission's report not only takes stock of what we have achieved since launching our poverty alleviation strategy, but it also lays the groundwork for our next steps. President, I will listen carefully to members' views and respond to them in my concluding speech. Thank you.
Mr. Gary Chen. Deputy President, I thank Mr. Lam Chun-sing for moving this motion on continuously reviewing the targeted poverty alleviation strategy. I believe members will touch upon grassroots, single-parent families, and so on. They're going to cover different social strata, but I'd like to focus my discussion on subdivided unit households as well as respite services provided to single-parent families. I'd like to share with you two figures. According to the CNSD, there are a total of 210,000 subdivided households in Hong Kong. And for those with children in the families, about 40%. Half of the 70,000 single-parent families have children aged 12 or below. About 100,000 people in Hong Kong are under different types of stress. They have subpar living conditions, economic hardships, and so on. We need to think how to help these 100,000 people. These are not just cold figures. Beneath the figures are the hardships faced by these families. Just imagine in a single-parent family, a mother needs to take care of the children inside a subdivided unit. She also needs to prepare meals and do the laundries. It's just impossible for the mother to look for a job working for 8 hours. It's not possible either to look for someone else to take care of the child and then ask the mother to go out to work. That is why we need to have child care services. This gives single-parent families to have breathing space. This also allows the parent in single-parent families to provide for their own families. Child care services matter. Of course, in the report on impact of a targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong, I can see that the administration has already done much in this regard. Regarding the school-based after-school care service scheme, as well as other child care services, protection is provided. There's been an increase in the number of people receiving these services. But are these services sufficient to help the 100,000 Hong Kong people as I mentioned? I'd like to share with you some figures. For children aged between 0 and 6 living in subdivided units, the figure stands at 12,800. And for those single-parent families with children, 9,800. That brings the total to $22,000. However, there are only 9,000 places for childcare services. What about school-based aftercare service scheme? 1,100. That is about 50% of the coverage. The remaining, that is half of these people, fail to access such services. Of course, there are similar services in the community, and for carers, there's been an increase in the salaries earned by community nannies. In theory, with more resources, there should be more people becoming community nannies. However, across 18 districts in Hong Kong, 8 districts have seen a decrease in the number of community nannies. Therefore, I believe that we do need to provide more support. In order to meet the needs of grassroots, we need to work on 2 main fronts. One, we need to increase the number of places under the school-based after-school care service scheme. We need to expand the coverage. We also need to enhance the community nanny scheme. We need to enhance their professionalism. We need to provide more training as well as supervision. More resources and financial incentives should be provided to nannies in order to enhance the appeal. We want to provide more support for community nannies, and we want to have more families, so that they can have breathing space as they take care of their own children. They can also take up jobs in order to provide for their own families. Thank you. Mr. Augustine Wong. Thank you. I am a member on the Commission on Poverty and Community Care Fund. I thank Ms. Lam for moving this motion on targeted poverty alleviation strategy and the amendments moved by Mr. Bill Tang, Mr. Bill Tang, Ms. Elaine CHIK, and so on. In the report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong, we can see the efforts of the administration. I believe the efforts are worth our recognition. It's all about providing targeted support. In order to implement targeted poverty alleviation strategies, we need to define who is poor. We used to set 50% of the family median household income as the poverty line. However, this methodology isn't a perfect one. This is a relative metric. There are definitely a group of people in Hong Kong or in a society that are poor. Even if there are improvements in living standards and income, there are always some people who are living below the poverty line. The poverty line only factors in income but not assets. What about seniors who have already built up a nest egg but they have no income? They will still be defined as the poor in Hong Kong or in a society. If an individual holds company accounts and handle transactions, income expenditure through the company income, they will also be considered living below the poverty line. We can see that the definition of the poverty line missed the mark. It doesn't reflect the actual living standard and economic conditions of some people in Hong Kong. There might be an increase in the number of people living under the poverty line. Subdivided households, single-parent families, elderly doubletons, they are defined as target groups. An in-depth study and statistics have been compiled. I believe the government should also work on poverty prevention. We shouldn't wait until someone falling under the poverty line before we render assistance. Is it all too late? Is it not ideal? For instance, for some members of the public, they have assets, they have their own properties, they have a stable job. In general, they should be considered the middle class. They have sufficient income for their daily lives. However, say for emergency situations when the family members suffer from a rare disease, it may take up to hundreds of thousands of expenditure on medical or healthcare expenditure. So what can they do? What if they do not have an insurance policy? They may have to sell their assets, or they may have to even resign to take care of their families. All these exert tremendous pressure on the finances of a family. We have different types of poverty. Some lack financial means, whereas some is mentally poor. They may not have immediate financial crises, but in the long run, they will crumble under pressure. This may result in a tragedy in the end. These families should also receive targeted support by the government. We need to plan ahead and render assistance before it is too late. We will have to provide assistance sooner or later. So why don't we provide assistance earlier? The government, through the Community Care Fund, provides subsidies for families who need to buy expensive drugs on the drug formulary. We need to provide targeted assistance to people in need in the community. We need to nip issues in the bud. We need to proactively identify people in need in Hong Kong. I hope that the government will take into account these poverty alleviation strategy.
Ms. Christine Fong, I speak in support of the motion on continuously reviewing the targeted poverty alleviation strategy and the amendments. The outline of the National 15 Five-Year Plan stipulates strengthening efforts to guarantee and improve people's livelihoods and solidly advancing common prosperity for all people. The SAR government is formulating the first five-year plan for Hong Kong. I think anti-poverty strategies should not just be on short-term basis. We need long-term strategies. We should not only distribute cash, we need to identify people's needs to help them get out of their plight. We need to enhance safety network in the community. We have to prevent people from falling prey to scams. We need to prevent people from getting addicted to gambling. Poverty is not just about receiving low salary. There are people who lack cash or money. There are people who lack care and support. Others lack opportunities to move up the social ladder. There are families that do not meet the definition of poverty. For example, there are middle-class families that need to pay a lot for their expenses, especially if there are elderly family members at their home. And for elderly households where their children are gone, they suffer from hidden poverty. They also suffer from caregiving burden. So I support the report recently published by the government. Targeted poverty alleviation should be about identifying those in need. The government needs to step up consolidation of data. The database should include enough information so that we can identify singleton elderly, doubleton elderly, as well as those subject to high pressure. I think the public hospitals should establish a database. We should make use of data, and as well as professionals and social workers to identify those with needs. The government has rolled out the Community Living Program as well as the Strive and Rise program, and it provides a living space for people. I think the government is moving towards the right direction. I want to know if the government would consider extending the Community Living Program to the homeless. For example, we need a shelter for homeless so that they have a place for taking shower as well as washing their clothes. As for the government's anti-poverty strategies, I have the following suggestions. First, we need to identify those with needs early. We need to leverage our district care teams as well as social welfare organizations. The government should allocate more resources to cover different age groups, especially singleton elderly as well as families with elderly members. Second, we need a way out. Apart from short-term support, we need to provide support to help people secure a job and to be able to take care of their health care expenses. We need to provide mental support and to help people from getting addicted to gambling as well. Third, different districts have different needs. Take Sai Kung, Chuan Kwan O, Hang Hao, and Ma On Shan as examples. Population there grow very rapidly. Elderly people, young people, and caregivers need more support. While the government has stepped up the voucher scheme for elderly people, however, we should not only look at the number of people with needs, we should also look at the service capacity of social organizations, including organizations that provide elderly daycare and childcare services. Targeted poverty alleviation is not just a slogan. We need to ensure that our people have a way out and that they can stand up by themselves again. We need to make sure that we take a more human or people-oriented approach. I so submit. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chen Pui-kong. Thank you, President. I speak in support of the motion on continuously reviewing the targeted poverty alleviation strategy. Last week, the Commission on Poverty released the report, and for the first time, it introduced indicators for analysis, and this provides a foundation. The outline of the National 15th Five-Year Plan states that we need to advance common prosperity for all, and the SAR government is formulating the first 5-year plan for Hong Kong. So we need to continue to review the targeted poverty alleviation strategy. This is in response to people's expectations. I have the following suggestions. First, we should explore reserving sites in light public housing estates or newly completed housing estates. Subdivided unit residents as well as grassroots families have limited space for different activities such as studying, and this has a long-term impact on children. I know a lot of families with a high number of family members, and there are often disputes among family members. The government has put in place the Community Living Room program, and the program has been well received. However, grassroots families, they mostly live in public housing estates as well as light public housing estates. I hope that there could be better planning in terms of the facilities in public housing estates so as to relieve intergenerational poverty. Second, we need to optimize support for caregivers. We need to relax relevant threshold to encourage them to be self-reliant. There are many families with elderly taking care of elderly, and therefore caregivers cannot take up full-time jobs. They are subject to high pressure. The current subsidies as well as respite services can have a certain positive impact. However, we should enhance the coverage of these services. We should relax the threshold for people to apply for caregiver subsidies. We should also encourage employers to put in place employees-friendly measures or family-friendly measures so that we can encourage those who want to get a job to secure one. Then they can become more self-reliant. Third, we should have strengthened interdepartmental support, and we should consolidate the data available. District care teams conduct home visits and help identify a number of hidden cases as well as high-risk groups. I declare that I am a member of the district care team in Sao Mau Ping. Many members of the district care teams work as volunteers, and they are dedicated to serving the community. However, they only play an assistive role. I think we need to expand various disadvantaged groups. Apart from collecting data, we need interdepartmental effort as well as support from professionals. So the government should consolidate and collect data. Government departments should share data with one another so that we can accurately identify those in need, and then we can accurately allocate resources to them. Targeted poverty alleviation is a long-term work. I hope the government can use the report published last week as a starting point. It should carefully study stepping up support so as to combat, alleviate, as well as prevent poverty. That way, we can dovetail with national strategies and provide equal opportunities to the underprivileged. Thank you. Mr. Wen-kit, I speak in support of Mr. Lam Chun-sing's motion on continuously reviewing the targeted poverty alleviation strategy. Recently, the government published the report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong. This report marks a new milestone. The government abandoned the indicator of income and stopped relying on poverty line. Instead, it introduced 7 dimensions and 21 indicators. It brought in international analysis, and its report covers housing, healthcare, education, and other areas. This kind of targeted support meets the needs of Hong Kong, which is becoming an aging society. However, there's no end to this. The outline of the National 15th Five-Year Plan clearly states that we need to solidly advance common prosperity for all. The SAR government is formulating the first 5-year plan for Hong Kong, and in the process, we need to continue to review the targeted poverty alleviation strategy so that we can combat, prevent, and alleviate poverty. I have the following 3 suggestions. First, we need to deepen the use of big data and AI within the government so that we can identify the underprivileged. Currently, single-parent families, elderly households, as well as subdivided unit residents are the target groups. But we need to optimize the use of big data. We should consolidate the data from the housing department as well as the hospital authority. We should reach out to elderly households that are at higher risks, and the district care teams should step in. We should also make use of school networks and make use of big data to include low-income families with, for example, children with special needs, so that we can provide timely support to them. Also, we should promote VPAT education. We should, at source, stop intergenerational poverty. The ultimate goal is to empower the people instead of provide unlimited support to them. The school-based after-school care service scheme has been effective. However, to lift people out of poverty, we need to empower young people so that they can move up the social ladder. In the first 5-year plan for Hong Kong, the government should include measures to step up support for grassroots young people. We should provide training, especially INT training for them, so that we can enhance their digital literacy and that they will be able to secure a good job in the new era. That way, we can stop intergenerational poverty. Third, on combating and alleviating poverty, we should provide support to caregivers. Combating and alleviating poverty should go hand in hand. We should ease the burden of grassroots families and unleash their productivity. There should be more after-school care service as well as child-care services. We should ask private sector to provide family-friendly measures to unleash the labor productivity of the grassroots. As we try to help grassroots to secure a job, we should put in place a transitional support mechanism. For example, we should provide textbook allowances as well as subsidies on healthcare expenses. We need collaboration among the government, the business sector, as well as the community. I hope that we can forge a consensus at the community level so that we can come up with a visionary 5-year plan and that we can ensure common prosperity for all. I so submit. Thank you.
Mr. Hong, come in. President, Mr. Lam Chun-sing's motion on continuously reviewing the targeted poverty alleviation strategy reminds me of a poem. That says, every government official should care about people's livelihood. There's nothing trivial about people's lives. Government should actively respond to people's demand and aspirations. I have been serving the public for 25 years. I've seen grassroots families living in subdivided units of just 10 odd square feet. We need to implement target poverty alleviation strategy to maintain Hong Kong's long-term stability. At the moment, Hong Kong is faced with many different challenges. We have an aging population, non-economically active people over 65 years old have reached over 500,000 people. Carers, mental stress is heavy. And it seems that we find it impossible to alleviate intergenerational poverty. I have a few suggestions. First, we need to continue to build public housing to improve the living environment of the grassroots people. Housing can safeguard grassroots people's life. I recognize the government's efforts in building public rental housing, and I hope that we can further shorten people's waiting time for public rental housing, and I hope that the government will increase the size of the public housing so that tenants live with respect. Second, we need to strengthen our support for carers of elderly. We need to improve our community network. I recognize the government's efforts on increasing the number of space and quotas at elderly care homes and the community care vouchers for carers. But I hope that our policy will dovetail with the speed of aging. And I think that we need to establish now a platform that connects services on healthcare, on social welfare, so on and so forth. We need to make sure that the cross-border residential care home schemes will expand to Fujian province so that we cover more elderly. Third, we need to improve the ancillary facilities for children education to alleviate intergenerational poverty. I do recognize the government's efforts and investment in education, but we need to further our support for grassroots school-age children so that they can change the future with knowledge. For example, recently, the Kowloon Alliance have just organized a scheme that invite elite musicians and scientists to tutor young people there. This is very popular among parents. Fourth, we need to establish an award for caring community. Hong Kong is a caring society. Around me, there are many of my friends that donate goods and food to elderly, and they offer free of charge haircut service. Some Chinese medicine practitioners also free service, and lawyers offering free legal consultation service. There are also some of my friends who purchase tea leaves from the mainland to donate to people in Hong Kong. And I think that we need to recognize all these efforts. Only when enterprises in Hong Kong can prosper, only when government have tax revenue, can we dedicate resources to alleviate poverty. So I think that the government needs to support the development of the business sector so that we can sustain our welfare policies. Mr. Chris Ip, thank you. Well, I think that instead of keeping donating to people, we need to teach them skills. We need to offer proper support addressing people's conundrum so that they can enhance productivity and competitiveness. Now, coming back to the report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong published by the government. Through years of efforts of the government, many different policies on housing, healthcare, education, welfare, so on and so forth have been implemented, targeting 3 poverty target groups that are elderly, children, and so on. We have 21 indicators set out in the report for people that have participated in the school-based after-school care service program. Their monthly income has increased by $3,500. So I think that this is how we empower those who can help themselves. But we need to continue to reform our policies, dovetailing with the change in government. As a result, I think that the government needs to continue to review our targeted poverty alleviation strategy. We can invite the business sector to participate. Now, on single-parent family, we need to alleviate them out of intergenerational poverty. The government have this Rise and Strive and Rise program to enhance young people's confidence and help them build people network. Education Bureau last week just announced the blueprint on digital education in primary and secondary school. All these efforts will help grassroots single-parent family in enhancing their competitiveness. But I think that the government should be more aggressive. We can learn from Children Development Fund by introducing a savings target in the Strive and Rise program. At the same time, when we try to help elderly, we need to offer them more support by allocating more resources. For elderly that are capable of working, I think that we can offer tax concessions for the business sector so that they roll out more family-friendly job positions so that elderly can improve their living conditions by working. there is great demand for child care and elderly care services. I think that the government can work with the social welfare sector by offering training for elderly and parents of single-parent families so that they become community nanny. At the same time, we have to offer stable jobs for the disadvantaged so that they can improve their living conditions. By that, we can benefit other people in need. And this is how they can achieve self-reliance. President, targeted poverty alleviation measures need to keep up with the time. All in all, I think that we need to encourage those who can work so that they can rely on themselves. And I think that's the spirit of targeted poverty alleviation strategy. I hope that the government can promote tripartite collaboration among the government, the business sector, and the community so that the disadvantaged can improve their lives through their own efforts. I support the motion and the amendment. Mr. Ken Wong. Deputy President, I speak in support of Mr. Lam Chun-sing's motion. The National 15th Five-Year Plan stipulates strengthening efforts to guarantee and improve people's livelihood and solidly advancing common prosperity for all peoples and sets out specific arrangements to alleviate, combat, and prevent poverty. The government just published a report, and they are formulating a 5-year plan to improve our poverty alleviation work. This is to address the aspirations of the grassroots people, and this is how we narrow the income gap. The structure of the grassroots people have been changing. People living in subdivided units, single-parent families, elderly singleton, working poor, families with children of special needs. They are faced with pressures on multiple aspects. They have limited family resources, and some children are restricted in their choices, and this results in intergenerational poverty. We need to identify those in need so that those who have escaped poverty will not fall back down. I have a few suggestions so that we can improve our support network. First, we have to establish an interdepartmental data platform so that we can identify groups with risk of poverty. Currently, the data among different government departments is not connected. It's difficult for us to identify potential or high-risk family of poverty. I think that we need to consolidate all the database so that we can more effectively identify elderly singleton, people with chronic illness, and grassroots students. Coupled with the district care team and social workers at school, we need to continue to support people in need. We have to offer rental subsidy, job training, and living allowance. Second, we have to establish a reward scheme to prevent people from falling back into poverty. Some people, after leaving the CSSA network, if they come across, say, healthcare expenditure, they may falling back into poverty again because of such minor economic fluctuations. I think that we should offer bonus to recipients of working family allowance. And I think that we should establish a low-interest emergency loan for families who just escaped poverty so that they can address minor economic fluctuations or sudden expenditure due to some crisis in their lives. At the same time, I think that education is the key to upward mobility among grassroots children. The government needs to pay attention if the digital gap will be widened just because grassroots students cannot afford artificial intelligence. The government should not just treat AI as a trendy tool. They need to see it as a irreplaceable public education infrastructure. We need to teach grassroots families and students how to make use of free of charge AI to upgrade themselves. Only when we make sure that there is fair distribution of technology resources can we ensure that students of different means have a equal starting point. And this is how we alleviate poverty alleviation. President, by improving poverty alleviation measures, we can achieve this goal of common prosperity for all people. By having diversified support for the people, we can alleviate their stress, we can narrow down the income gap in society. Through fair allocation of education resource, we can alleviate intergenerational poverty, and this help us build a more inclusive and caring society and contribute to the common prosperity goal of our city, of our country. Thank you.
中
Dr. Johnny Ng. Thank you, Deputy President. The 15th Five-Year Plan says that we need to enhance protection and we need to promote common prosperity for all. The Hong Kong government is drawing up the first 5-year plan full steam ahead. This is exactly the blueprint that we need to draw up to integrate our nation. Recently, the government published the report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong. It doesn't use money alone to measure poverty. At the same time, senior households, subdivided units, and single-parent families, these are the three types of people in Hong Kong that require resources the most. I believe the government's direction is worth our recognition. I believe the working poor also need our support. Poverty alleviation needs to be sustained in the long run. We need to move with the times. I believe that we need to empower the poor in Hong Kong. We need to pivot to a new method. We need to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty. I have three main suggestions. We need to grow larger the pie to help people in Hong Kong to be lifted out of poverty. We need to eradicate intergenerational poverty. In recent years, the government has been lifting people out of poverty. However, in Hong Kong, we have an aging population. We are faced with an economic structural transformation. We need to have a long-term measure to enhance the knowledge of the disadvantaged groups in Hong Kong through education, training, resource pooling, and so on. Green finance, digital economy, we need to focus on these areas to provide training. These are exactly the efforts of the Employees Retraining Board. We also need to work more with NGOs and non-profit making organizations in Hong Kong. We need to encourage local enterprises to make more impact investments. We need to make good use of commercial resources and professional technologies. We need to drive INT and emerging economies. I suggest that we set up an index of sense of gain. I have previously suggested organizing a series of events in order to enhance the sense of gain in Hong Kong. The latest report touches upon 21 macro indicators. It also touches upon social resource value. We have seen great stride ahead. In the coming 5 years, in the first 5-year plan of Hong Kong, we must emphasize the subjective feeling and sense of happiness in Hong Kong. For example, we have the community living room program. We also have the school-based aftercare service scheme. We need to check whether we have released or unleashed the potential labor force of working families. We need to provide more targeted support. With an aging population in Hong Kong, we need to stay forward-looking. We shouldn't neglect elderly doubletons' need. We need to take care of elderly singletons living in Hong Kong. I suggest we promote drone technologies and a smart social network. We also need to leverage on the efforts of the community care teams to provide more psychological and mental support to the needy in Hong Kong. We need to provide laser-focused help to those who require help in Hong Kong. The National 15th Five-Year Plan has pointed us towards the correct direction. We need a targeted poverty alleviation strategy. We need to help the disadvantaged in Hong Kong. These are the cornerstone of the long-term stability and prosperity of Hong Kong. Thank you, Deputy President. We do not have sufficient time to wrap up the motion debate, so I am going to adjourn the Council at 6 o'clock today. Mr. Jonathan Stewart Lamport. Thank you. I speak in support of Mr. Lam's motion and Ms. Elaine CHIK's amendment. There's been a stereotype about businesses in Hong Kong. They think that businesses only care about the business environment and the profitability of enterprises in Hong Kong, and I'd like to set the record straight now. Businesses indeed care a lot about the poverty alleviation strategies of the administration. They also provide a lot of support. The BPA has done a lot on helping the disadvantaged in Hong Kong. We tap the pulse of the community to see what they really need. The National 15th Five-Year Plan sets out that we need to ensure and improve public well-being and promote common prosperity for all. That is not just a macro target of our nation. It is also our common aspirations and concerted efforts of different sectors of the community, including the business sector. When I was young, I had been living in a subdivided unit owing to family changes. I still have vivid memory in relation to the living conditions. The units were very cramped. And I also understand very well that grassroots in Hong Kong are living from paycheck to paycheck, and they are working very hard for their families. It's not just about material assistance. We need to help them change their fate. According to the report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong, in 2026 to 27, social welfare expenditure totaled $135.9 billion, accounting for about 23% of the total expenditure. The report also sets out the fact that 4,200 rents could be saved. All these are immediate impacts that we can see. However, we need to catch up with the times. We shouldn't just disperse money. The sense of gain and sense of happiness do not just hinge on cash or welfare or benefit. It's all about one's mental state and psychological state. We need to support the psychological state and feelings of grassroots. And I believe that we need to provide more support through the pilot program on community living room as mentioned in the report. We need to improve the living quality of subdivided unit tenants in a well-rounded manner. In 3 different indicators, 70% of the respondents have said that they have seen improvements. They get together in the community living rooms as if they had known each other for a long time. This is exactly a good place for them to rally together to enjoy leisure time. The school-based after-school care service scheme can also help reduce friction in families. This is actually a poverty alleviation strategy on the psychological and personal development fronts. Quite many organizations related to me that they want to collaborate with different organizations or even the administration. They want to provide more space across the territory to provide more places for members of the public to get together. It's not just a place to rest their feet, but a powerhouse to rally together. We want to send our warm messages to grassroots. They are also willing to provide professional, psychological, and mental support to grassroots, not least children and youngsters. We want to help them to build self-esteem and self-confidence. Poverty alleviation is a long-term effort. We must continue to soldier on. It requires to consider effort of different community sectors. We need to continue to review poverty alleviation strategies. General chambers of commerce and different enterprises are more than willing to collaborate with the government, and they are willing to realize their own potential so that different strata of Hong Kong can also share the economic fruits together. This is exactly how we can facilitate our mobility for grassroots and our next generations. Thank you. Ms. Nixie Lam, thank you. I speak in support of Mr. Lam's motion. Under the 15th Five-Year Plan, it sets out ensuring and improving public well-being and promoting common prosperity for all. There are different services such as school-based after-school care service scheme and training and support given to women in order to unleash their workforce. We have seen unprecedented structural changes in the poverty trends in Hong Kong. We couldn't just rely on one single safety net. We must pivot to a new model. Recently, I have come to learn a new term. That is, the poor, but then they are highly intelligent. They are very clear about the operation of society. They have access to a lot of different information online. They do not just lie flat, so to speak, at home. They do work very hard. The internet is actually an eye-opener for them. But there is no room for them to make mistakes. The high-end positions in society there's a lack of these high-end positions in society. What is more serious is that AI has been developing by leaps and bounds. And we have seen a reshuffle in the market in society. Grassroots used to work very hard, such as pen-pushing tasks, basic administrative duties, customer service duties. This is how they make both ends meet. However, these positions are progressively being replaced by AI. This is like a double whammy in the sense that basic positions will be replaced by AI. Younger generations will lose the buffer, and for higher-end positions, the threshold remains very high. This is a structural, difficult situation. It is not the case that grassroots are not diligent enough, but then their old techniques have been replaced by new times. If we do not think out of the box to refine our poverty alleviation strategies, we definitely couldn't cope with the challenges brought by the age of AI. The government recently announced that there would no longer be the definition of a poverty line. We need to take into account the actual conditions of society, and we have three main categories. And I believe this is a major breakthrough to replace the definition of poverty line. If we only provide a comprehensive safety net, then we will never move past the challenge. Singapore has a scheme. It targets people aged 40 or above. Business matching, employment first, training later. Singapore successfully helped a lot of people to get a job first and then learn new skills. Australia, by contrast, lacks a technical transformation training, and the result is that members of the public only rely on social benefits. It's difficult for them to be lifted out of poverty. Just we can refer to the poverty alleviation model in the Chinese mainland. I have held different roles. When we needed to help different villages to provide support, what matters the most is that we need to identify who we need to help the most. We need to work in conjunction with social welfare workers and community care teams in order to reverse the new trend. In this new era, poverty alleviation is not just about feeding the people. We also need to resolve technical and technological difficulties. In the interest of time, I can only provide these suggestions. I hope that we work together.
Ms. Grace Chan, I thank Mr. Lam Chun-sing for the motion. Recently, the government published the report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong, and it sets the direction to alleviate poverty. The Chief Secretary said caregivers will be incorporated into one of the target groups and that it will expand its outreach effort. I acknowledge the effort. I have the following suggestions. First, I think we need to make social investment and explore the effectiveness of our anti-poverty strategies. Second, we need to make use of the community wisdom and consult them. Third, we need to incorporate the working poor into the safety net. The World Bank in 2024 published a report, and it clearly states that the anti-poverty efforts around the world has slowed down. This is because the nature of poverty has changed. We do not solely look at people's income or salary anymore. Instead, we look at housing, people's health and education, and this has become a very complex issue. The World Trade Organization also said that every country needs to transform from simply giving out subsidies to making social investment as a prevention. Early education or preventive measures could lead to 7 to 13 times of returns. So social investment is a kind of investment with the greatest return. If we look at the report from these perspectives, then we should ask one question, that is, are the resources that we allocate to the community include investment resources? By investment, I mean investment in education, training, and healthcare to stop intergenerational poverty. We want every family to be lifted out of poverty. I urge the government to refer to the human resources framework published by the World Bank. We need to refer to that investment return mechanism. In the long run, by making such investment, we can lift people out of poverty, and we need data to prove that we are making the right investment. Also, we need consultation. In April this year, a social organization released a report, and the value of this report lies in that community organizations or the community are not just service recipients. They could be active facilitators. So, social organizations should take the lead. If they take the lead instead of the government, we could make more progress. In the Boao Summit in 2026, an important concept was raised. The summit stressed that government should not simply consult the community. Instead, a standing mechanism should be established so that targeted groups or recipients of benefits could take part in the design of policies. So, by people-centric, we are not just chanting slogans. We need to transform it into real actions. For example, the Commission on Poverty could hold summit. It could also ask social organizations to hold these summits so that frontline groups as well as the community could take part in the review of anti-poverty strategies and help set KPIs. This could help shorten the distance between the community and the government. Also, I wish to say that the working poor need support. What we see is that every year there is a poor working population of over 200,000. They may be cleaning workers, security guards, or food processing workers. They have just met the threshold to receive CSSA. However, they are not defined as living in poverty. So the International Labour Organization has repeatedly warned that the core problem of the working poor is that they lack social protection and they lack stability and security. So we need to provide training to our labor to upskill them. And this is not just the duty of the Labor and Welfare Organization. Instead, we need cross-departmental efforts. Your time is up, Mr. Stanley Ng. President, I speak in support of Mr. Lam Chun-sing's original motion. I also speak in support of the other amendments. In both the motion and the amendments, the outline of the National 15th Five-Year Plan is mentioned. That is, we need to solidly advance common prosperity for all. We need to ease the burden of the grassroots, and the amendments urge the SAR government to optimize its strategies to combat, alleviate, and prevent poverty. And all these points deserve our recognition. I acknowledge the SAR government's work on combating poverty. It has adjusted its subsidy schemes, it has increased transitional housing supply, and targeting the grassroots, it has rolled out various types of relief measures, and it is focusing on targeted poverty alleviation strategy. It targets different groups, including low-income families and single-parent households. The overall policy direction deserves our support. The SAR government recently published the report on impacts of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong. Generally speaking, the report summarizes the anti-poverty strategies rolled out by the current term government. It also talks about the complex issues we face in terms of poverty, and it abandons the previous definition of poverty. It basically rethinks its strategies. Targeted poverty alleviation strategies from the government focus on subdivided unit residents, single-parent families, as well as all elderly households. And we see improvement and progress in terms of the design of these policies. So this is a kind of interim stage success. However, there are shortcomings to this report. For example, there is a lack of targets in quantifying the effectiveness of the anti-poverty strategies. It lacks measures to identify hidden poverty population, and it also lacks strategies to address structural problems. And these hinder our progress in alleviating poverty. The FTU is of the view that if we want to truly address poverty, we should not rely on short-term support. We should not just be satisfied with the increase of numbers of people that get out of poverty. We should come up with strategies to address structural and deep-seated problems. We need targeted solutions. In the long run, we need to support the employment of the grassroots. We need to ease their housing burden. We need more social benefits. We should not be single-minded. Instead, we need to adopt a diversified approach that covers training, housing, and collaboration. We need to consolidate resources, provide matching services, and reach out to the target groups so as to help lift people out of poverty and turn the situation around. President, we will continue to serve as the bridge for the labor sector. We will tie in with the government's effort, and we will reflect the grassroots voices. We would help the government improve its policies, and we will work with the community to build a harmonious and equitable society. If we neglect the Gini coefficient and the poverty line, it will not help us solve the problem easily. If we abandon the definition of poverty, we're simply burying our heads in the sand. Your time is up, Mr. Chan Pok-chi. President, I thank Mr. Lam Chun-sing for the motion. The outline of the National 15th Five-Year Plan stipulates strengthening efforts to guarantee and improve people's livelihoods and solidly advancing common prosperity for all. This sets a direction for Hong Kong. The SAR government recently published the report on the impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy. It shows an interim stage success of the government. Most of the KPIs have been met, and we managed to exceed some of the KPIs. However, with structural problems as well as an aging population, we need to further improve ourselves. I will talk about data support for children as well as community network. First, on making use of social resources. Currently, different government departments hold data on housing, social welfare, education, and healthcare. However, there's a lack of sharing mechanism for these data, and that's why we cannot provide targeted support for the grassroots. And this may lead to duplication of resources or omission of certain target groups. There should be a cross-departmental data platform. On the premise of providing people's personal privacy, the government should consolidate all these data under the CSSA schemes as well as the working allowance scheme. Through the data, we can accurately match resources with those in need. For hidden young people as well as single-parent families, we could provide targeted support to them. And this is to do away with the one-size-fits-all approach that we used to adopt. We should also enhance the after-school childcare service scheme. This is to help the working parents who do not have time to take care of their children after work. Expensive tuition fees makes up an important part of grassroots families' expenditure. Some children are left alone at home and they lack the support they need. Currently, there's not enough places under the respite service scheme, and for remote areas as well as villages, the problem is worse. We should expand the after-school care service scheme by extending it to after 7 p.m. so that more low-income families or working families could benefit. Apart from after-school care service scheme, we also need to organize activities, homework counseling, as well as reading activities for children, so as to narrow the disparity between the rich and the poor. And this is also to stop intergenerational poverty. We should unleash the productivity of the grassroots so that working parents could work with peace of mind. And this is also to ensure children's healthy development. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the community living room program. Since the launch of the program, it has provided grassroots families with a space for leisure activities. It also provides free advisory services for the grassroots. It is an important platform between the government and the community. Currently, some community living rooms are small in size, so we need long-term and systematic planning. The government should, based on the population of various districts, enhance the number of community living rooms. It should also provide counseling services as well as advisory services for families. The government should bring in volunteer groups as well as social welfare organizations. It should consolidate supplies and resources provided by the community. And we should build a one-stop community living rooms and turn them into support centers. Poverty alleviation is a long-term effort. We need to continue to review our strategy in order to respond to the needs of the community. I therefore urge the government to keep refining its anti-poverty strategies to alleviate the pressure of the grassroots so that we can adopt a more human-centric approach. Thank you.
Mr. Chan Pui-lan, thank you, President. The SAI government has all along attached a lot of importance to poverty alleviation. They just published a report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy in Hong Kong. It targets 3 groups, people living in subdivided units, single-parent families, and elderly. The government has been dedicating resources to improve the various policies. I thank Mr. Lam Chun-sing for moving the motion so that we can discuss this problem. I think that poverty alleviation is about identifying the target groups in need so that we can help them in a more targeted manner. For subdivided unit families with school-aged children and single-parent families with children younger than 12 years old, I think that we need to help them. We have to offer them cash subsidy. The labor participation rate among this group is lower. They are often in low-skilled jobs. The government rolled out the community living room program, Strive and Rise program, school-based after-school care service scheme. This may improve children's mental and physical well-being, improve the parental relationship, and relieve parents' stress in childcare, and unleash labor force. These relief measures may address immediate challenges faced by these people, but over the long run, we need to make sure that they can move up the social ladder. I think that we need to unleash the labor force among families living in subdivided units and single-parent families with children aged below 12 years old. I think that we need to improve our after-school care service scheme and make it more flexible. Currently, the scheme take care of children until 6 p.m. I think that we have to extend the care hours to until evening or holidays so that their parents can work without any worries. And I think that the enterprises and employers should roll out flexible working arrangement and launch more family-friendly working arrangement. Poverty alleviation is not just the responsibility of the government. We need the entire society to take part in it. Many target groups work in low-skilled jobs. Some of them are poor regardless of whether they work or not. So I think that we need to dedicate resources to help them upgrade their skills. I think that the government should work with enterprises. We should offer tax concessions for them so that they can build a safety network for the disadvantaged. President, our living costs have been rising, our labor force is shrinking, we are having an aging population. Poverty is not just about some specific groups in society. It's a common phenomenon in our society. The government have dedicated much resources and implement many policies on education, on healthcare, housing, social welfare. If we cannot quantify our poverty alleviation measures, it's difficult for us to assess the effectiveness of our policies. I think that although the government has abandoned using poverty line, I think that they need to now plan ahead and assess the overall poverty situation in the government, in the community. And this is how we address the problems of working poor, of intergenerational poverty. And I think that the government need to include the relevant policies and KPIs in our 5-year plan so that we can monitor regularly and adjust the policies accordingly. I support the motion and the amendment. Professor William Wong. Thank you, Deputy President. This term of the government have been working to improve the living quality of grassroots people. They have rolled out many measures to improve people's living conditions, say, for example, the light public housing scheme and the pilot program on community living room. They've also launched the Strive and Rise program. All these address the core demands of grassroots people. These help grassroots people address their problems on, say, living and enhance their sense of happiness. AI and digital economy are developing rapidly. We have to pay attention to digital poverty. This hidden problem is key to narrowing a digital divide in the society. When we study at school, digital operation is all around us. Grassroots people have no access to IT resources such as digital facilities, tools, or network. This undermines their competitiveness in this digital era. For this reason, I think that we need to prevent digital poverty and include it as one of our targets in the 5-year plan. We need to create a society that can benefit everyone with our prosperity generated by technology. I have a few suggestions. I think that we need to establish a community digital training network and focus on ethnic minorities and disadvantaged groups. We can use platforms such as the district care teams and the community living room to build and offer digital training service. The content of the courses offered through this platform should be about, say, for example, e-payment, prevention of digital fraud, artificial intelligence, so on and so forth. This will help disadvantaged understand what technology is about and upgrade their skills in artificial intelligence. And this is how we can narrow the digital divide in our society. Also, we need to establish a AI training system. We need to address the unemployment risk of low-skilled worker and grassroots people. We have to work with the business sector so that we can establish a dedicated funding support for digital transform and AI application for various sectors. This can alleviate the financial burden of grassroots people in training. Also, I think that we need to develop AI micro-credentials, and we need to tie in the AI ability with the qualifications framework so that we can help working poor and the unemployed upgrade their skills. Third, I think that we can look into developing a dynamic alarm system that is digital-based. We have to be proactive in preventing poverty. We can learn from our country. they do have a digital monitoring system for prevention of poverty. I think that we can develop our own digital monitoring system targeting grassroots families who used to be covered by our social welfare policies. Under the premise that their personal information is protected, I think that we need to consolidate their healthcare, their housing, and credit rating data so that we can monitor their situation. And I think that we need to visit them physically so that we can address their demand. We have to offer them training, we have to offer them digital devices and support so that we can intervene early to help them. I so submit, I support the motion and the amendment. Mr. Andrew Lam. President, I thank Mr. Lam Chun-sing for moving the motion on continuously reviewing the targeted poverty alleviation strategy. Why do we need to continuously review our strategy? It's because our economy, our society changes constantly. We need to be targeted because we need to help those in need. We need to also help those who are self-reliant so that they will not fall into poverty. Our country lifted 100 million people out of poverty. It's not just about protection, it's about development and opportunity creation. The 15th Five-Year Plan says that we have to strengthen efforts to guarantee and improve people's livelihood and solidly advance common prosperity for all people. This is not just a strategy of our country, it is a guiding principle for our 15th Five-Year Plan, or for our 5-year plan. The government just published the report on impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy. They have identified 3 priority groups, namely single-parent family, elderly, and subdivided unit families. It is said that all KPIs set for these 3 groups have been met. I recognize the government efforts. The government tried to quantify their welfare policies and create this analysis of social transfer values. There are many different definitions for poverty. In order for us to alleviate poverty in a more targeted manner, we need to prevent poverty. We need to have concrete analysis. Junior positions are fading out. Many people who graduate from universities cannot find a job. Many traditional positions have been replaced by automation. Educational attainment does not equal upward mobility anymore. NEET may be prevalent in Hong Kong in the future, just like what's happening in Japan. Many people choose to now work part-times, and some of them are forced to do so. If people don't learn new skills, they will stay in poverty. I think that now we have to focus on IT training. In order to prevent middle class from falling into poverty, we need to focus now on offering training to them. I think that we need to establish a new framework so that we can prevent new type of structural poverty. The government need to be forward-looking. We have to address the macro societal changes, and we have to deal with the deep-rooted problems that we have. For community living room, it addresses the lack of living space of subdivided units, but as the Basic Housing Unit Ordinance was implemented, many people will no longer be living in subdivided units. The government said that they're going to locate the 4 priority groups within this year. I hope that the government will establish a platform that address the challenges faced by working poor families. Apart from providing hardware support in the community living room by offering, say, washing machines, dryers, we need to also provide software support such as community assistance. We have to upgrade our community pharmacies, and we need to make sure that the district care teams know about the poverty situation in the areas under their purview. The government must make use of big data. When there's a high percentage of elderly singleton or single-parent family in a district care teams should be alerted so that they can visit them. I think that the government should also work with the business sector. President, targeted poverty alleviation is not just about allocation of resources. It's about a transformation of ability. Under the 15th Five-Year Plan, I hope that the government will be more forward-looking, adopt a science-based approach in helping grassroots people and our disadvantaged group.
Mr. Jonathan Leung. Thank you, Deputy President. We need to ensure the cautious use of public funds. The Liberal Party suggests that we need to channel public funds into the most needed groups. We need to improve the living conditions of people in Hong Kong to enhance the employment competitiveness, and we also need to promote intergenerational mobility. I'd like to take this opportunity to bring up the concept of middle-class poverty. For this group of people, they often fall through the cracks. They are the hidden sandwich class. Seniors have built up a nest egg, but then they are cash-strapped. They are also a type of sandwich class. They have their own property, they have some savings, but then they are also under stress. We need to effectively cover this group of people. And I'm afraid that there will be more people falling into the underserved pockets of our community. We have old age living allowance, CSSA, and so on. However, in Hong Kong, there are a lot of middle class who work very hard throughout their life. They pay tax, but then they are not covered by the social benefits safety net. They fall between two stools because of the one-size-fits-all social benefit policy in Hong Kong. There is an asset cap of $400,000 for elderly singletons. If their MPF contributions exceed $800,000 or $1 million, then they are already rendered not eligible. And the savings will be used up in about 10 years. Men live up to 82.8 years old, whereas women in Hong Kong live up to 88.4 years. After they have got the MPF contributions at the age of 65, no longer how hard they save, the savings will dwindle gradually and they will fall into poverty in the end. This will increase the financial burden of society. That is why we need to act before it is too late. We need to plug the gap. We have reverse mortgage, and we also have annuity schemes to help seniors to transfer their assets into stable income streams. However, seniors lack confidence in these schemes owing to the traditional belief. I suggest that the government need to be more proactive in publicity and promotions. We need to help seniors to turn their assets into cash. Middle class seniors have health risks. Recently, the public medical sector has already carried out a reform in relation to the fees. The fees for A&E as well as non-emergent ailments has spiked. The Liberal Party suggests lowering the medical healthcare cap from $10,000. We also suggest that the government expand the coverage of elderly healthcare voucher schemes. This will not only ease the burden on seniors in Hong Kong, and this will also ease the pressure on public hospitals. This is a win-win situation. For the government to achieve targeted poverty alleviation, it needs to keep reviewing its strategies. We need to build a more resilient system against an aging population, which is developing rapidly in Hong Kong. We need to make sure seniors in Hong Kong will retire very well in Hong Kong. There is not enough time for us to wrap up this motion. I now suspend the council until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.